Unit 4, Lesson 1, Psychological Skills Training. Here's a preview of what we're going to learn in this lesson. After this presentation, we should be able to identify different types of psychological skills training, understand the myths surrounding psychological skills training, and explain the importance of mental toughness. Mental toughness in athletes begins with a sense of control. That's control over feelings and actions in any and all situations, especially those stressful situations. And mental tough athletes have a strong commitment to having an active role in their training. They see themselves as accountable for their own actions. Mentally tough athletes also exhibit confidence in their own ability to do well under stressful situations and even everyday training. And mentally tough athletes like a challenge. Change is seen as an opportunity to grow and develop, not as a threat to who they are as an athlete. So this is what we're aiming for and hoping all athletes are like. We want capable, confident young people who believe in themselves and aren't afraid to step up to challenges. Why is it important? Psychological factors account for most fluctuations in sport performance from day to day. Most athletes in their respective sport have the physical skills to compete. It's the mental toughness and the mental skills that can start to separate the upper tier athletes from the rest. Achieving mental toughness equals consistent performance in one sport and leads to an increased enjoyment in training and competition for each individual athlete. Looking at some of the myths around psychological skills training, the first myth, the first most common myth, is that it's for elite athletes only. Well, this is obviously false. The earlier you start, the better. Starting to learn psychological skills training at an early age means you'll learn to control your emotions and actions and have control over those emotions and actions in lots of different situations. It's also much easier to learn these skills in a relaxed environment before you actually need to use these skills for real, because stress affects how you learn. So trying to learn these psychological skills while you're playing a sport is often harder than learning them in a non-stressful setting, a classroom setting like we're in now. Common myth number 2 about psychological skills training is that it's only for problematic athletes. That's completely false. Learning skills before you need them helps with all learning processes. We learn better, again, when we're not stressed. So if you're already stressed, if you're already a problematic athlete and experiencing some type of stress within your sport, it's harder to learn the psychological skills needed to help you overcome adversity. Common myth number 3 about psychological skills training is that it's not useful. This is a big false. Psychological skills training can help anyone at any stage, including people who don't compete, such as regular exercisers or non competitive athletes, as these skills that you develop through psychological skills training can serve as coping mechanisms for everyday situations, both in and outside of sports. And myth number 4 about psychological skills training is that it's too time consuming. It will take too long to develop these skills and put them to use, and it's not worth it learning it. Again, that's obviously false. Mindfulness can be done anywhere, at any time, even for only a few seconds at a time. Once you learn the skills and once you make them part of who you are, they're with you for the rest of your life, and you can use them at any time in any situation. both on an athletic field during an athletic event or outside of athletics entirely. And myth number 5 about psychological skills training is that you're just born mentally tough. You're just born with it. And it's something that you can't learn. This is 100% false. You can learn anything. You can learn to manage anxiety during stressful situations. You can deal with stress, which is always going to occur, in healthy ways. You can train yourself to process the stressors and process the information in a healthy and manageable way. Athletes are not doomed for failure if they don't naturally know how to deal with stress and change, how to react positively to these situations, which are naturally occurring, can be taught. So you don't have to be born with it, and you don't have to have learned it the hard way. You just simply have to allow yourself to acquire these skills. Ultimately, mental toughness can be built so that an athlete can deal with stress and stressful situations better. How do we learn about psychological skills training? Well, there's three phases of psychological skills training: the education phase, the acquisition phase, and the practice phase. The education phase, participants quickly recognize the importance of psychological skills. You understand that not only can these skills help you in the immediate, they can help you for the rest of your life. And so you receive education, you receive training that focuses on the positive impact on performance and the positive impact on recovery. Understanding how a good mentally tough athlete deals with adversity can also help them deal with success, deal with performance ups and downs, deal with recovery from injuries, recovery from day to day situations. Increasing an athlete's awareness of the impact of mental skills training also takes place in this education phase, because not only do athletes become stronger the more mentally tough they are, psychological skills training can increase the awareness that leads to more buy in to learning and adapting. It's like once you learn how to do one specific act in your sport, be it basketball or soccer, football or baseball, once you learn how to do one thing and do it well, you want to learn something else. Well, the same is true for psychological skills training. Once you learn how to overcome one type of adversity, you now file that away, you have that skill, you want to learn other types of ways to overcome adversity, ways to deal with stress, ways to help improve your performance. And so that improvement becomes exponentially driven. You continue to grow further and further and further. Once an athlete has a firm background in the education phase, next begins the acquisition phase, where you learn the strategies and techniques for implementing the learned skills. So, the coping strategies that you've learned, the anxiety reduction strategies, the visualization techniques, how to do proper goal setting, not unrealistic goal setting, but realistic goal setting, and how to help reduce the tension within a group atmosphere, within a whole team dynamic, and even within yourself. Once you've learned these physical and psychological skills training techniques through the education phase, the acquisition phase is how you put them into practice, how you use those coping strategies during practices and games, how you reduce your anxiety before games, during, and after, how to use those proper visualization techniques to help manage your performance and raise your expectations. The last of the three phases of psychological skills training, the practice phase. Here's where you have three primary objectives within the practice phase. After you've learned how to deal with mental toughness, mental fatigue, and all of the psychological rigors of athletics through psychological skills training, You've acquired the skills necessary. Now you need to put it into practice. This is this happens when the skills automate through a process called overlapping. One psychological skill helps the other psychological skill, leads to a third psychological skill, and you start to build on it. Proper goal setting helps you visualize how you can perform in that game. And because you set proper goals and you visualized yourself achieving those goals, you've reduced anxiety that you have before a game or a match. And you're able to better cope with any stressors that come up during the game or match. You're able to have a better outlook after the game because these skills that you've been building, that you've learned about, you've acquired, and now you're putting into practice, they're overlapping with one another. That leads to a systematic integration of the psychological skills into performance situations, where not only can you practice the psychological skills, you can put them into practice in performance situations during games, during matches, during moments of huge competitiveness. And a simulation of these skills that athletes apply in those competitive situations, that's the final phase. You've learned the information, you've acquired the skills to implement the information, and now you've practiced it. You've overlapped these skills into these competitive situations, and now it becomes second nature. Now it becomes automatic that you are able to handle all the stressful situations because of your psychological skills training.